Well, welcome to this report presentation with Sensys Gatso Group. Together with me, I have Ivo Mönnink, the CEO of the group. How would you summarize the first quarter of 2024?
Well, looking at the first quarter, I think, one thing that really stands out is a very strong order intake. So it ended up at nearly 320, so a growth of more than 250% in the order intake. One of the highest in Q1s in our history, so that's one thing to mention here. Equally important, maybe even more important, that is that 86%, if I'm not mistaken, from that order intake is coming from the US recurring TRaaS business. So that ended up this quarter at 275 million. So that is one important thing. Seeing some traction in the Middle East with our partner there, Tahacom. Big opportunities coming to the market. Another highlight, I would say, is that the start of the rollout of the big contracts in Sweden and the Netherlands. We're about to go live in Sweden in Q3, and we already started it in the Netherlands. So that's an important message in this quarter as well. And then last but not least, we have a strong financial position of 112 million. So those are, in summary, the highlights of the report.
Thank you. You mentioned the delivery to Trafikverket, the major order you booked in 2022. You have stated that you expect deliveries to start in Q3 of this year. Does that imply that you have gained confidence in the ramp-up plan?
Well, I mean, it really hasn't changed. We always had quite some high confidence. We're the only supplier to that customer, that long-standing customer. So we know that we will roll it out, and the timing is in line with our expectations. So we always had great confidence in the rollout plan with Trafikverket.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned order intake was strong, and I agree with you. I also view it as strong given the growth as well as the absolute number. In general, can you say anything about the lead times from a contract signing, especially for these trust contracts, to revenue recognition?
Well, it always depends on the number of cameras we need to put in, and then there's of course the permits that need to be realized, and then the construction work can start. So it's a little bit depending on the city-state situation. But let me give you an example. You might have seen that we just signed a huge contract in Albany today, 197 million. So the signing is today. We extend the contract for red light, and we're adding 20 new school zones. So the permitting and the installation around these 22 school zones will actually start the coming month. And we have as a target that schools start in September to be up and running and issuing citations around that period. Then there is a 1-month lead time between the citations and actually the revenue coming in. So first revenue we would expect from that contract to be in October. So all in all, in this specific example, we talk about a 6 months lead time between contract signing and revenue recognition.
Thanks for that clarification. I think that was an important explanation to understand how long in general the lead times are in your business. Well, still on the same topic on the order intake and especially the strong order intake in the US, we saw 9 contracts, of which 4 were new contracts, while 5 were renewals. Would you say that this is a catch-up effect of previous activities that hasn't materialized, or is it rather a sign of strong underlying demand for your business?
I think in this case it's a combination. The market is more in favor currently for automated traffic enforcement. You might have picked up that Florida, Connecticut, and California are 3 states where now school zone speed enforcement is allowed. So there's a lot of activity in those markets. Those were typically more red light markets, red light enforcement, and now speed enforcement around school zone is added to that. So we see a growth on the market. That combined with the fact that we have a very good team in place in the US that is driving the relationship with customers existing customers, but also future new customers. So it's a combination of a market effect as well as a strong sales effort from our US team.
Thank you. Your cash flow improved significantly from last year. You stating that your earnings are a bit burdened by seasonal effects. But turning back to the cash flow, can you elaborate on the main drivers behind the strong cash flow and also touch a little bit on your financial position?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen, we've pushed the deliveries of the vehicle in motion to Saudi towards the end of the year, and then we see the payments coming in this year. So in this quarter, so there is definitely a working capital impact of around 60 million coming from payments out of Saudi, and that's on the positive side. On the negative side, it is on the investment side, I should say, it's minus 27 million, which is mostly cameras installed in the USA, and of around 16 million and around 8 million in software platforms. So those are the main drivers to an improved cash position. And on our financial position, I do believe we are in a good position. We see good payments from our customers, which is typically the case when you have governmental customers. And we also see sort of the cash coming from the US programs improving over time.
Let's move to your financial targets for 2025 that you have communicated for quite some while now. But as far as I can see, you introduced a new wording that towards the end, etc., in your report. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you view your financial targets and the progress in reaching these over time?
Yes, I mean, we were tempted to make it more clear that in our ambition, the full year 2025 is included. So maybe it seems that we have introduced a little bit of confusion, but we are not changing our ambition. It's always been, the ambition has always been 1 billion revenue in 2025, 600 million of that being a recurring trust business and more than 50% EBITDA, and we're not changing that at all. So it's the same. Our confidence level in reaching that, I think it's driven by three things. One is the strong developments in the USA, and a proof of that is the huge contract we signed today. So we really see a lot of traction in the USA, and that's the market where there is also the need to introduce more automated traffic enforcement because of the fatalities and injuries actually going up where they should come down. So that's the market effect plus our strong sales team in the USA. That's a big driver. Saudi Arabia, we all know that there is the Vision 2030, meaning that they're going to invest quite big sums of money in the infrastructure, and automated traffic enforcement is also an important part of that. And it also means that if you want to have certain targets for 2030, you need to start putting cameras in operation pretty soon. So that's a big driver there as well. And then the third driver for our ambition is the backlog we have, mostly the Swedish and the Dutch contract, which is altogether 1.2 billion. It's going to be spread over more years, but a large part of that will fall into the 24-25 years.
Okay, thank you. And over to my final question. You have today announced a contract you mentioned several times, or a major order rather, which to be clear is not part of your Q1 order intake, but it will come into the second quarter. It seemed to be substantially higher when I compare that to your kind of normal order amount. What's the driving force behind this big order, and which takeaways can be made from it going forward?
So it's a contract of $19.7 million. The original contract was 3.7 million, and that was for red light. So we extend that contract for red light by 5 years. But on top of it, we realize $16 million of school zone speed enforcement revenue over five years. So So there's a couple of conclusions. One is that a customer, in this case Albany, is very happy with us, so they're happy to engage into a new contract, and they also want to extend it with a new enforcement type, which is school zone speed enforcement. Nobody can oppose to making lives of kids around schools safe. So I think this is one of a key drive also for future revenue growth, is that once we're focusing on speed enforcement around schools, that's definitely an important new solution in many cities. But what we can also see is that, you know, where the red light is only generating 3.7 million in revenue, the most of the addition comes from 16 million, comes from adding speed enforcement to a city. So speed enforcement is a much higher revenue driver for us than red light enforcement.
Okay. Thank you, Ivo. That concludes today's report presentation. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you so much, Örjan.